Everyone froze. In the most exclusive restaurant in the city, the only sound was the heavy breathing of a man with blood dripping from his knuckles. This wasn't just a temper tantrum. This was Alessandro Moretti, the son of the city's most feared Don, tearing the world apart because he could. The staff trembled. The manager was hyperventilating behind the bar. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe. Until a young waitress, who nobody ever noticed, walked straight into the eye of the storm. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just held out a clean bandage and a glass of ice water. That single act of silence didn't just save the restaurant. It started a war that would burn the entire city to the ground. This is the story of how a broken waitress tamed a monster. The crash echoed like a gunshot through the vaulted ceilings of the Gilded Lily. A $3,000 bottle of vintage red wine exploded against the imported marble floor, spraying crimson liquid across the pristine white tablecloths like a crime scene. "Garbage!" Alessandro Moretti roared, swiping his arm across the nearest table. Silverware, crystal glasses, and porcelain plates clattered and smashed to the floor. "I said I wanted the 1998 vintage. Do you people have wax in your ears, or are you just begging to be shut down?" The restaurant, usually a hum of polite conversation and clinking cutlery, was deathly silent. Patrons, senators, CEOs, and socialites cowered in their booths, averting their eyes. You didn't look Alessandro Moretti in the eye when he was in a mood. You didn't speak. You prayed he didn't notice you. Alessandro stood in the center of the wreckage, his chest heaving inside his bespoke black suit. His dark hair was disheveled, falling over eyes that burned with a mixture of alcohol-fueled rage and a deep, crushing boredom. At 24, he was the heir to the Moretti crime family. He had everything a man could want: money, power, fear. But he felt nothing. Destruction was the only thing that made him feel alive. The restaurant manager, a trembling man named Mr. Henderson, stepped forward, wringing his sweaty hands. "Mr. Moretti, please. It was a mistake. The sommelier is new. We can comp the meal. Everything is on the house." Alessandro laughed, a cold, sharp sound. He stepped over the broken glass, crunching shards beneath his Italian leather shoes. He grabbed Mr. Henderson by the lapels of his cheap suit. "You think I care about the money, Henderson?" Alessandro hissed, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "I could buy this building, burn it down, and build a parking lot just to park my car. I want competence. And right now, all I see is waste." He shoved the manager back. Henderson stumbled and fell into a waiter, sending a tray of appetizers flying. Alessandro looked at his hand. He had cut his knuckles when he smashed the wine bottle. A line of dark blood trickled down his fingers, dripping onto the floor. The sight of his own blood seemed to irritate him more. He raised a fist, ready to flip another table, ready to escalate the violence until the police arrived. Not that the police would arrest him. They were on his father's payroll, too. "Sir." The voice was soft, barely a whisper. But in the vacuum of terror that filled the room, it carried. Alessandro froze. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. Standing 3 feet away from him was a waitress. She couldn't have been older than 22. She was small, with tired eyes and messy brown hair pulled back in a utilitarian bun. Her uniform was slightly too big, hanging off her thin frame. In her hands, she held a silver tray. On it sat a clean white linen napkin and a glass of ice water. Mr. Henderson gasped from the floor. "Audrey, get back! Are you insane?" Audrey ignored him. She didn't look at the manager. She didn't look at the shattered wine or the terrified customers. She looked straight at Alessandro. She wasn't trembling. That was what stopped him. Everyone trembled. Everyone begged. But this girl, she looked at him with an expression he couldn't place. It wasn't fear, it wasn't admiration. It looked like exhaustion and pity. She stepped closer, crunching on the glass. She set the tray down on the only table Alessandro hadn't overturned yet. She picked up the napkin. "Your hand is bleeding," she said simply. Alessandro stared at her, stunned into silence. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Audrey said. Her voice remained steady, though he noticed a faint pulse fluttering in her neck. "You're the man making a mess that I'm going to have to clean up until 3 a.m. And you're bleeding." She reached out. The bodyguards by the door tensed, hands reaching for their jackets, but Alessandro raised a hand to stop them. He was too baffled to be angry. He let her take his hand. Her fingers were rough, calloused from hard work, and cool against his feverish skin. She wrapped the linen napkin around his knuckles, applying firm pressure. She didn't flinch at the blood. "Drink the water," she said, nodding to the glass. "You're drunk and you're dehydrated. It's making you cranky." Cranky. A collective gasp went through the room. No one called the butcher's son cranky. Alessandro stared down at her. He could snap her neck with one hand. He could have her fired, evicted, and exiled from the city with a phone call. But the coolness of the water she offered, and the gentle pressure on his hand, felt grounding in a way he hadn't experienced in years. "You have guts, Piccola," he muttered, the rage slowly draining out of him, replaced by curiosity. "I don't have guts," Audrey said, finishing the knot on the makeshift bandage. She finally looked up, her hazel eyes meeting his dark ones. "I just have double shifts and a headache. Please, sit down. I'll bring you the soup of the day. It's better than the wine, anyway." She turned around and walked back towards the kitchen, grabbing a broom from the corner as she went. Alessandro stood there, the bandage white against his skin. The room waited for him to explode. Instead, he pulled out a chair from the only surviving table and sat down. "Bring the soup," he called out after her. For the first time in his life, Alessandro Moretti didn't want to break something. He wanted to know why the girl with the sad eyes wasn't afraid of the monster. The next morning, the sun beat down on the pavement of East End, a stark contrast to the glitz of the downtown district where the Gilded Lily was located. Audrey sat on the edge of her fire escape, counting crumpled bills. $74. That was it, the breakage fee. Henderson had taken the cost of the broken wine glasses out of the staff's tips, claiming it was collective responsibility. It didn't matter that Alessandro Moretti had been the one to smash them. The rich didn't pay for their mistakes. The people serving them did. Audrey rubbed her temples. Her mother's medication was $80. She was $6 short. Again. She stuffed the money into her pocket and climbed back through the window into the small, stifling apartment. Her mother, Beatrice, was asleep in the living room, her breathing raspy and difficult. The oxygen tank hummed rhythmically in the corner, a constant reminder of the time running out. "I'll fix it, Mum," Audrey whispered, pulling a blanket over her mother's thin shoulders. "I just need a few more shifts." She changed into her day clothes, faded jeans and a grey sweater, and headed out. She had a second job at a diner across town, and if she hurried, she wouldn't be late. But as she stepped out of her building, she stopped. Parked directly in front of her crumbling apartment complex, looking like a spaceship that had landed in a junkyard, was a sleek, black Maserati. The windows were tinted pitch black. Audrey's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her head down and tried to walk past it. The passenger window rolled down with a smooth electronic hum. "Get in." It wasn't a question. It was a command. Audrey froze. She looked into the car. Alessandro Moretti sat in the driver's seat. He was wearing sunglasses, but she could feel his gaze burning into her. His hand, still wrapped in the linen napkin she had tied the night before, tapped rhythmically on the steering wheel. "I have to go to work," Audrey said, clutching her purse strap tight. "You're not going to work," Alessandro said. "You're coming with me." "I can't. If I'm late, I get fired. And if I get fired, I can't pay—" She stopped herself. She wasn't going to give him a sob story. Men like him didn't care about sob stories. They collected them like trophies to laugh at later. Alessandro sighed, taking off his sunglasses. The bruising around his knuckles was dark purple. "I'm not kidnapping you, Audrey. If I wanted to kidnap you, you'd already be in the trunk. I want to talk. Get in." She hesitated. She knew who he was. Everyone knew the Moretti family ran the docks, the unions, and the gambling dens. But she also remembered the way he had looked at her the night before, like a confused child who had just been told no for the first time. "5 minutes," she said. "And you drive me to the diner." A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Deal." She got in. The interior smelled of expensive leather and faint cologne. It was cool, quiet, and terrified her more than the street outside. "How did you find where I live?" she asked, staring straight ahead. "I'm a Moretti. I can find anyone," he said dismissively. He reached into the center console and pulled out a thick white envelope. He tossed it into her lap. Audrey looked at it. It was heavy. "What is this?" "Compensation," Alessandro said, starting the engine. The car purred to life. "For the disruption last night, and for the bandage." Audrey opened the flap. Inside was a stack of $100 bills. It had to be at least $5,000. It was more money than she made in 4 months. It could pay for her mum's meds, the rent, and maybe even a specialist doctor. Her hands trembled. She closed the envelope and placed it back on the console. Alessandro glanced at her, frowning. "What are you doing?" "I can't take this." "Why not? Is it not enough?" He reached for his wallet. "I can double it." "It's not about the amount," Audrey snapped. She turned to face him, anger flaring in her chest. "You think you can just throw money at everything you break? You terrified everyone in that restaurant. Henderson docked our pay to cover the glasses you smashed. My friend Sarah was crying in the bathroom for an hour because she thought you were going to shoot us." Alessandro's face hardened. "I don't shoot service staff. Bad for business." "You're a bully," Audrey said, her voice shaking now. "You have everything, and you act like a toddler because your wine wasn't the right year. I bandaged your hand because you were bleeding, not because I wanted a tip. I don't want your blood money." She reached for the door handle. "Wait," Alessandro said. His voice lost its arrogant edge. He looked genuinely baffled. "Henderson docked your pay?" "Yes." "And you need this money. I saw your apartment building. I saw the pharmacy bag in your trash when I was waiting." Audrey felt her face flush hot with shame. "Stay out of my trash." Alessandro stared at the envelope, then at her. He seemed to be processing a language he didn't speak. He had spent his life surrounded by people who clawed and scrapped for his favor, who would kill for that envelope. And this girl, who clearly had nothing, was throwing it back at him because of principle? "Fine," Alessandro said. He put the car in gear. "I won't give you the money." Audrey relaxed slightly. "Thank you. Now please let me out." "No," he said, peeling away from the curb. "I promised to drive you to the diner. But first, we're making a stop." "What? No! Where are we going?" Audrey panicked. Alessandro's eyes were cold, focused on the road, but his hand gripped the gear shift tight. "We're going back to the Gilded Lily. I need to have a conversation with Mr. Henderson about his accounting practices." Audrey's stomach dropped. "Please don't! You'll make it worse. He'll fire me." "He won't fire you," Alessandro said darkly. "By the time I'm done with him, he'll be lucky if I let him keep his job." He sped up, weaving through traffic with dangerous precision. Audrey watched his profile. He was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. But there was a darkness in him that frightened her. He didn't know how to fix things. He only knew how to force them. She didn't know it then, but sitting in that car was the most dangerous thing she had ever done. Not because of his driving and not because of his temper, but because on the sidewalk across the street, a man in a grey hoodie snapped a photo of them with a long lens camera. He dialed a number. "Yeah, boss. It's Rocco." "You were right. The Moretti kid has a weak spot, and I'm looking right at her." The tires of the Maserati screeched as Alessandro curbed the car right in front of the crimson awning of the Gilded Lily. It was barely 11:15 a.m., and the restaurant was in the middle of prep for the lunch rush. Audrey felt like she was going to be sick. "Please," she begged, her hand on the door handle. "Just drop me at the diner. I can't be seen with you. You live in a different world." Alessandro ignored her. He got out, buttoning his suit jacket with a sharp snap, and walked around to open her door. "Get out." "No." He leaned in, his face inches from hers. Up close, she saw the gold flecks in his dark eyes and the tension in his jaw. "Audrey, men like Henderson only understand one language: fear. If I give you money, he will find a way to take it. If I fix this my way, he will never touch you again. Now get out, or I carry you in over my shoulder." Audrey looked at him and realized he wasn't bluffing. Swallowing her pride, she stepped out of the car. He didn't hold her hand. That would be too intimate. But he placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her with a possessive pressure that made her skin tingle. They swept past the bewildered hostess and marched straight into the dining room. The staff froze. Forks stopped midway to tables. The clatter of the kitchen died down as the swinging doors were pushed open. Mr. Henderson was near the bar, berating a busboy about water spots on the glasses. When he saw Alessandro, the color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. "Mr. Moretti!" Henderson squeaked, smoothing his tie frantically. We weren't expecting you. Is everything all right? Did you leave something?" Alessandro didn't stop walking until he was toe-to-toe with the manager. He loomed over the smaller man, radiating a dark, suffocating aura. "I did leave something," Alessandro said, his voice dangerously calm. "I left my conscience here last night, and I heard you've been charging your staff for my entertainment." Henderson's eyes darted to Audrey, who was standing slightly behind Alessandro, looking at the floor. I don't understand. It's standard policy to—" "Smash." Alessandro picked up a crystal vase from the nearest table and dropped it. It shattered loudly on the floor. "Oops," Alessandro said, deadpan. "Put that on my tab. Actually, put everything on my tab." He took a step closer, invading Henderson's personal space. "I heard you took $74 from this woman's tips. Is that true?" "It was a breakage fee," Henderson stammered. "The wine glasses—" "I broke the glasses," Alessandro roared, his voice suddenly thundering through the room. "Me, not her. Do you think I can't afford a few pieces of glass, Henderson? Do you think the Moretti family needs you to subsidize our expenses? No, sir, of course not. Then why are you stealing from a girl who makes minimum wage?" Alessandro grabbed a handful of napkins from the bar and threw them into Henderson's chest. "Open the register." "Sir, open the register." Henderson scrambled behind the bar, his fingers fumbling with the keys. The drawer popped open with a ding. "Take out $500, Alessandro commanded. Henderson's hands shook as he counted the bills. Here, sir. Give it to her. Alessandro pointed at Audrey. Henderson walked around the bar, his head bowed, and extended the cash to Audrey. I'm sorry, Audrey. Here. Audrey looked at the money, then at Alessandro. She felt a mix of humiliation and vindication. She took the cash. It was enough for the meds. It was enough for groceries. And Henderson? Alessandro wasn't done. If I hear that you've docked anyone's pay for accidents, or if you treat Miss Miller with anything less than the respect you would show my own mother, I will shut this place down. I will have the health inspector here every day. I will have the fire marshal condemn the building. Do you understand? Yes, Mr. Moretti, crystal clear. Alessandro turned to Audrey. The rage vanished from his face, replaced by that strange, intense curiosity. Come on, I'll take you to the diner. They walked out in silence. The staff stared at Audrey with wide eyes, not with jealousy, but with awe. She had just been protected by the devil himself. In the car, the silence stretched for blocks. You didn't have to do that, Audrey said softly, staring out the window. You embarrassed him. He deserved it, Alessandro muttered. He's a parasite. He preys on people who can't fight back. And what are you? Audrey asked, turning to look at him. You're a Moretti. People say your family breaks legs for missed payments. Alessandro tightened his grip on the wheel. My father breaks legs. I just break bottles. He sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. I'm not a good man, Audrey. I know that. But I'm not a thief. He pulled up to Sal's diner, a greasy spoon on the edge of the industrial district. It was a far cry from the Gilded Lily. Here, he said, unlocking the doors. Audrey unbuckled her seatbelt. She hesitated, then looked at him. Thank you. For the medicine money. My mum, she needs it. Alessandro's expression softened. Your mum is sick? Respiratory failure. It's complicated. She opened the door. Goodbye, Alessandro. Wait. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. It had no company name, just a gold M and a phone number. Take it. I don't need... Take it, he insisted, pressing it into her hand. If Henderson tries anything, or if you need anything else, call me, directly. Don't go through my office. Audrey took the card. She felt a spark of electricity where their fingers brushed. She quickly got out of the car and ran into the diner, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. Alessandro watched her go. He waited until she was safely inside before he put the car in gear. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. But as he pulled away, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Attached was a photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, showing him and Audrey standing outside the diner. The caption read, "Pretty pet you found, little prince. Shame if she got hurt." Alessandro's blood ran cold. He slammed on the brakes in the middle of the street, horns blaring behind him. He dialed his head of security, Marco. "Marco!" He barked into the phone, his voice shaking with a new kind of rage. "I need a detail, 24/7, low profile." "For who, boss? Your father?" "No," Alessandro said, looking back at the diner window where Audrey was tying on her apron. "For a waitress named Audrey Miller, and find out who is tailing me. I want them dead by sunset." 3 days passed. Audrey tried to convince herself that the incident with Alessandro Moretti was a fever dream, a strange, violent, beautiful blip in her otherwise grey existence. She went to work. She came home. She took care of Beatrice. Beatrice's condition was deteriorating. The summer heat was oppressive, and the small AC unit in their apartment had broken weeks ago. Beatrice spent her days wheezing, her skin taking on a greyish pallor. "I'm fine, honey," Beatrice wheezed on Tuesday night, trying to sit up. "Don't worry about me. Go to your shift." "I'm not leaving you like this," Audrey said, wringing out a cool cloth and placing it on her mother's forehead. "I called in sick to the diner." "You can't afford to lose that shift," Beatrice argued weakly. "I can't afford to lose you," Audrey countered, her voice cracking. Then the coughing fit started. It wasn't the usual cough. It was a deep, wet, rattling sound that seemed to tear Beatrice's chest apart. She gasped for air, her eyes wide with panic, clutching her throat. "Mum!" Audrey screamed. She grabbed the oxygen mask, cranking the tank to the max, but Beatrice's lips were turning blue. "Mum, breathe! Please!" Beatrice's eyes rolled back. She slumped onto the pillows. "No, no, no!" Audrey fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with sweat. She dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? "My mother! She's not breathing! Send an ambulance! 42 East End Avenue!" The next hour was a blur of sirens, flashing lights, and the terrified sobbing that Audrey couldn't suppress. She rode in the back of the ambulance, holding her mother's limp hand. At St. Jude's Hospital, chaos reigned. It was a public hospital, underfunded and overcrowded. Beatrice was wheeled into a hallway because there were no rooms. Nurses rushed past, ignoring Audrey's pleas for updates. "Please," Audrey begged a passing doctor, grabbing his arm. "She needs a ventilator. She stopped breathing." "We're doing our best, miss," the doctor said dismissively, pulling away. "We're at capacity. She's stable for now, but we have to wait for a bed in ICU." "She doesn't have time to wait," Audrey cried. She stood alone in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway, watching her mother struggle for every breath on a gurney parked next to a vending machine. She felt helpless. Small. Invisible. "If you need anything else, call me." The memory of his voice cut through the noise of the hospital. Audrey reached into her pocket. She had kept the black card with the gold M. She stared at it. Calling him was dangerous. He was the mob. He was trouble. But looking at her mother's blue-tinged lips, Audrey knew she would make a deal with the devil himself if it meant saving her. She dialed the number. It rang once. "Speak." Alessandro's voice was sharp, alert. It's Audrey." The silence on the other end was immediate. Then his voice dropped, softening instantly. "Audrey, what's wrong? You're crying." "It's my mom," she sobbed, unable to hold it back anymore. "We're at St. Jude's. They don't have a bed. She's in the hallway. She's dying, Alessandro. I don't know what to do." "Stay there," he commanded. "Don't move. Give me 5 minutes." The line went dead. 4 minutes later, the double doors of the ER swung open. But it wasn't Alessandro. It was a team of 4 doctors in pristine white coats, led by the chief of medicine, Dr. Aris. Behind them were 2 large men in dark suits, Moretti security. "Where is Beatrice Miller?" Dr. Aris demanded, scanning the hallway. Audrey stepped forward, trembling. "Here, she's here." "Move her!" Dr. Aris barked at the nurses. "Trauma 1 is cleared. Get her on the advanced vent. Now!" The team descended on Beatrice like a well-oiled machine. Within seconds, they were wheeling her away toward the restricted ICU wing. "Miss Miller?" Audrey turned. One of the men in suits, a giant with a scar running through his eyebrow, nodded at her. "I'm Marco. Mr. Moretti sent us. Please come with me. We have a private waiting room set up for you." "Is he coming?" Audrey asked, wiping her eyes. "He is already here." Marco led her up to the top floor, the VIP wing usually reserved for politicians and celebrities. The air here smelled of lavender, not bleach. It was quiet. Marco opened the door to a private suite. Inside, Alessandro was pacing, his suit jacket discarded on a leather sofa. When he saw Audrey, he stopped. She looked wrecked. Her eyes were red, her clothes rumpled, her face pale with exhaustion. "Alessandro," she breathed. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He didn't ask if she was okay. He could see she wasn't. Instead, he did something that surprised them both. He pulled her into his arms. It wasn't a romantic embrace. It was a shield. He wrapped his arms around her, pressing her head against his chest. He smelled of rain and expensive sandalwood. "She's going to be okay," he murmured into her hair. "Dr. Aris is the best pulmonologist in the state. I pay his student loans. He will fix her." Audrey collapsed against him, all the fight draining out of her. She cried into his shirt, soaking the expensive fabric. He just held her, one hand stroking the back of her head awkwardly but gently. "Why?" she whispered after a while, pulling back slightly to look at him. "Why are you doing this? This is thousands of dollars. I can't pay you back." Alessandro looked down at her, his expression grim. He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I don't want your money, Audrey." His jaw tightened. "But there is a price." Audrey stiffened. "Here it comes, the catch." "What is it?" she asked, bracing herself. Alessandro stepped back, walking to the window that overlooked the city skyline. "Someone is watching me. A rival family, the Valentinis. They took photos of us at the diner." Audrey gasped. "The diner?" "They think you mean something to me," Alessandro said, his back to her. "In our world, weakness is exploited. If they think I care about you, they will target you to get to me." "But I don't mean anything to you," Audrey said, though the words felt heavy in her mouth. "I'm just a waitress." Alessandro turned around. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "You are the only person who has touched me without wanting something in return in 10 years. That makes you dangerous to them." He walked back to her, his gaze intense. "I can't let you go back to your apartment. It's not safe. They know where you live. They know where you work." "So what are you saying?" Audrey asked, panic rising again. "I'm saying you're not going home," Alessandro declared. "Until I deal with the Valentinis, you are under my protection. You will stay at my penthouse. And tonight—" He paused. "Tonight there is a gala. The mayor's charity ball. My father will be there. The Valentinis will be there. And you're coming with me," Alessandro said. "We have to hide you in plain sight. If I hide you away, they will think you are my weakness. If I bring you out, on my arm, looking like a queen, they will think you are my mistress, my property. And by the laws of the commission, no one touches the Don's son's property without declaring war." Audrey stared at him. "You want me to pretend to be your mistress?" "I want you to stay alive," Alessandro said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "And I want to keep you close, because the thought of anyone hurting you—" His hand clenched into a fist at his side. "It makes me want to burn the city down again." Audrey looked at the door where her mother was being treated, safe and cared for. Then she looked at the man who had saved her, a man who was offering her a golden cage to protect her from the wolves. "Okay," she whispered. Alessandro nodded. He picked up his phone. "Marco, call the stylist. We have 4 hours." But neither of them knew that the threat wasn't just from the Valentinis. The real danger was closer. At the nurse's station downstairs, a man in scrubs was watching the security monitors. He watched Audrey enter the elevator with Alessandro. He picked up a burner phone. "Don Lorenzo," the spy whispered. "Your son has the girl. He's bringing her to the gala." On the other end of the line, the deep, gravelly voice of the godfather, Alessandro's father, chuckled darkly. "Good. Bring her. It's time I met the little mouse that distracted my lion, and then we will dispose of her." The dress was a weapon. That was what Alessandro had told her. It was emerald green silk, backless, with a slit that ran dangerously high up her thigh. It cost more than Audrey had earned in her entire life. As the stylist finished pinning her hair into an elegant chignon, Audrey looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. The tired waitress with the grease stains on her apron was gone. In her place stood a woman who looked like she belonged in a palace or a war room. "Chin up," Alessandro said from the doorway. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, his dark hair slicked back, highlighting the sharp, aristocratic angles of his face. He looked devastating. If you look down, they will think you are weak. If you look them in the eye, they will wonder what you know that they don't. Audrey turned to him, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know anything, Alessandro. I'm terrified." He crossed the room, the heavy scent of his cologne enveloping her. He reached out and placed a diamond necklace around her throat. His fingers lingered on her nape, sending a shiver down her spine. "You don't need to know anything," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "You just need to hold on to me. Tonight, you are not Audrey Miller. You are mine. And no one takes what is mine." The drive to the mayor's charity ball was a blur of city lights and tension. When the car stopped, the flashbulbs blinded them. Alessandro got out first, buttoning his jacket, and offered his hand. When Audrey took it, he pulled her close, his arm wrapping around her waist like a steel band. They walked the red carpet in silence. The reporters shouted questions. "Alessandro! Who is she? Is this the girl from the restaurant? Is it true the Valentinis have declared a vendetta?" Alessandro ignored them all. He guided her into the ballroom, a cavernous hall dripping with crystal chandeliers and gold leaf. The room was filled with the city's elite, corrupt politicians, judges, and the heads of the 5 families. The music stopped the moment they entered. Hundreds of eyes turned to them. "Breathe," Alessandro murmured, squeezing her waist. A man separated himself from the crowd. He was older, with silver hair and eyes that mirrored Alessandro's. But where Alessandro's eyes held fire, this man's held only ice. He leaned on a cane topped with a silver wolf's head. Don Lorenzo Moretti, the godfather. "Alessandro," Lorenzo said, his voice booming. He opened his arms, but his eyes were fixed on Audrey like a hawk spotting a field mouse. "And you brought a guest." "Father," Alessandro said, his tone respectful but guarded. "This is Audrey." Lorenzo stepped closer. He didn't offer his hand. He circled Audrey, inspecting her. "The waitress, the one who cleans up your messes." Audrey felt her knees weaken, but she remembered Alessandro's advice. "Chin up." She met the Don's gaze. "I'm the one who stopped him from bleeding, sir." Lorenzo paused. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, followed by a cold, shark-like smile. "She speaks. Interesting. Most women in your company learn to be silent, my son." "She is not most women," Alessandro said sharply. "She is with me. So I see." Lorenzo leaned in close to Audrey, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Enjoy the champagne, my dear. It's a very expensive vintage. It would be a shame if it was your last glass." He pulled back with a jovial laugh, patting Alessandro on the shoulder. "Come, drink. The Valentinis are staring. Let's show them a united front." The night was a nightmare disguised as a fairy tale. Alessandro never left her side. He introduced her to senators and captains of industry, his hand constantly on her back, her arm, her waist. The physical contact was supposed to be a performance, but it felt alarmingly real. Every time he touched her, Audrey felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with fear. Then, the orchestra struck up a waltz. "Dance with me," Alessandro commanded. He pulled her onto the floor. As they moved, the world blurred. Audrey looked up at him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "Your father hates me," she whispered. "My father hates everyone he can't control," Alessandro replied, spinning her effortlessly. "He thinks you make me weak. He doesn't understand." "Doesn't understand what?" Alessandro stopped spinning. They were in the center of the floor, chest to chest. "That you make me want to be strong, not just violent. Strong." Audrey's breath hitched. For a moment, the dangerous men and the plotting Don disappeared. It was just a boy and a girl, caught in a storm. "Alessandro," she breathed. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. He was going to kiss her. Right here, in front of everyone. Crash. The sound of shattering glass tore them apart. A waiter had dropped a tray near the kitchen doors. But it wasn't an accident. As the guests gasped, a man in a tuxedo lunged from the crowd, a knife gleaming in his hand. He wasn't aiming for Alessandro. He was aiming for Audrey. "Audrey, get down!" Alessandro roared. He didn't reach for a gun. He moved with terrifying speed, stepping in front of her. He caught the assassin's wrist in midair. There was a sickening crack as bone snapped. The assassin screamed. Alessandro didn't stop. He drove his knee into the man's stomach and threw him across a banquet table, scattering food and wine everywhere. The ballroom erupted in screams. Security swarmed. Marco and his team were there in seconds, guns drawn. Alessandro stood over the groaning assassin, his chest heaving. He looked wild, primal. He grabbed the man by the hair, hauling his face up. "Who sent you?" Alessandro snarled. The assassin spat blood. He looked past Alessandro, straight at the VIP balcony, where Don Lorenzo was sipping his wine, looking completely unbothered. "The message has been delivered," the assassin wheezed. Alessandro looked up at the balcony. His father raised his glass in a silent toast. It wasn't the Valentinis. It wasn't a rival. Don Lorenzo had ordered the hit on Audrey in the middle of the gala, just to prove a point. "I can touch her anywhere. You cannot protect her." Alessandro turned back to Audrey. She was shaking, clutching her arms, staring at the violence he had just unleashed. "We're leaving," he said, his voice terrifyingly low. "Now." He didn't walk her out this time. He grabbed her hand and practically dragged her through the kitchen exit, into the alley where Marco brought the car around. "Get in!" Alessandro ordered. "Alessandro, your father—" "Get in!" he screamed, slamming his fist against the roof of the car. The metal dented. Audrey scrambled inside. Alessandro jumped in the driver's seat, leaving Marco behind. He peeled out of the alley, tires smoking. "Where are we going?" Audrey cried as they sped onto the highway, weaving through traffic at 100 miles an hour. "To the only place he can't see us," Alessandro said. His knuckles were white on the wheel. "War has started, Audrey, and I'm going to finish it." The penthouse was a fortress in the sky, 40 stories above the city. But to Alessandro, it felt like a cage. He paced the living room, stripping off his tuxedo jacket and throwing it on the floor. He poured a glass of whiskey, drank it in one swallow, and threw the glass against the wall. "He tried to kill you," Alessandro paced, his voice breaking. "In front of me. He wanted me to see it." Audrey sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, still in her green gown. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, hard realization. She wasn't just a fake girlfriend. She was a pawn in a game of kings. "Alessandro," she said softly. "I should have killed him," Alessandro ranted, running his hands through his hair. "I should have walked up to that balcony and thrown him over the edge." "Alessandro, stop!" Audrey stood up. She walked over to him and grabbed his hands. They were shaking. Look at me." He stopped pacing. His eyes were wild, tormented. "I can't protect you, Audrey. I thought I could. I was arrogant. He owns the police. He owns the judges. He owns my own security detail." "You saved me," she said firmly. "Back at the restaurant, at the hospital with my mum, and tonight. You saved me. And look where it got you." He pulled away, gesturing to the windows. "Trapped in a tower with a monster." "I am a monster, Audrey. I am his son. His blood is in my veins." "No," Audrey said. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. She reached up and cupped his face. His skin was burning. "You are not him. You bandaged your hand because you were bleeding, but you didn't hurt anyone until they tried to hurt me. You have a heart, Alessandro. It's buried deep, but I saw it." Alessandro stared at her. The rage in his eyes slowly melted into something else. Desperation. Hunger. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "You should be running away from me." "I'm not running," Audrey said. He let out a ragged breath. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a release of all the fear and tension of the last few days. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air. Audrey kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. He lifted her up, her legs wrapping around his waist, and carried her towards the bedroom. For a few hours the war outside didn't exist. There was only the heat of their skin and the silence of the room. "Tadom." Alessandro woke up instantly. He didn't know what woke him. The room was dark. Audrey was asleep beside him, her head on his chest, her breathing soft and rhythmic. Then he heard it. The faint click of the electronic lock on the front door downstairs. Only 3 people had the override code for the penthouse elevator. Himself, Marco, and his father. Marco was at the hospital guarding Beatrice. Alessandro moved slowly. He slid out from under Audrey, careful not to wake her. He reached under the bed and pulled out a Sig Sauer P226. He checked the chamber. Loaded. He pulled on a pair of sweatpants and moved to the bedroom door, cracking it open. Shadows moved in the hallway. 2 men. Professionals. They moved with silence, their weapons raised. They weren't here to talk. Alessandro didn't hesitate. He swung the door open and fired. Bang, bang! The first intruder dropped, shot in the chest. The second one dove behind the marble kitchen island, returning fire. Bullets chewed up the drywall inches from Alessandro's head. "Audrey, get down!" Alessandro shouted, retreating into the room and flipping the heavy oak dresser over to create a barricade. Audrey bolted upright, screaming as a bullet shattered the bedroom mirror. "Stay down!" Alessandro yelled. He leaned over the dresser and fired 3 shots into the hallway. "Moretti!" a voice shouted from the hall. It was a gruff, unfamiliar voice. "Give us the girl and you live. Don Lorenzo's orders." Alessandro felt a cold fury settle over him. His father hadn't just sent assassins. He had sent executioners into his son's bedroom. "Come and get her," Alessandro taunted. He looked at Audrey. She was huddled on the floor, clutching the sheets, eyes wide with terror. But she wasn't crying. She was looking around for a weapon. She grabbed a heavy brass lamp. "There's a fire escape on the balcony," Alessandro said, checking his ammo. "I'm going to draw their fire. You run." "No," Audrey said. "I'm not leaving you." "Audrey, please. If you stay, we both die." "If I leave, you die," she argued. A flashbang grenade rolled into the room. Boom! A blinding white light and a deafening noise filled the space. Alessandro's ears rang. He fell back, disoriented. The second assassin charged into the room, a suppressed pistol aimed at Alessandro's head. Alessandro was still blinking away the blindness. He couldn't lift his gun in time. Clang! The assassin crumpled to the floor. Audrey stood over him, the brass lamp in her hands dented and bent. She was breathing hard, her hair wild. Alessandro stared at her, his vision clearing. I told you, she panted, dropping the lamp. I'm not leaving. Alessandro scrambled up. He checked the hallway. Clear. But there would be more. His father wouldn't stop with 2. He grabbed his phone. He didn't call the police. He didn't call Marco. He called the one number he had sworn never to dial. Uncle Sal, Alessandro said, when the line connected. Salvatore the Butcher Moretti, Don Lorenzo's estranged brother, the only man Lorenzo feared. Alessandro. The voice was raspy, surprised. It's been 10 years. He tried to kill me, Sal. He sent men into my home. He wants the girl dead. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a low chuckle. Lorenzo always did eat his young. Where are you? Penthouse. We're compromised. Get to the roof, Sal said. I have a chopper in the city. I'll pick you up in 5 minutes. But nephew? Yeah. If I land on that roof, there is no going back. We are taking the crown. We are killing the king. Are you ready for that? Alessandro looked at the dead men on his floor. He looked at Audrey, whose feet were bleeding from the glass, but who stood beside him like a warrior queen. Yes, Alessandro said, his voice cold as death. Let it burn. He hung up and grabbed Audrey's hand. Can you run? She nodded, gripping his hand tight. Where are we going? To start a revolution. They sprinted for the stairs to the roof, leaving the shattered luxury of his old life behind. As they burst into the cool night air, the sound of rotors beat against the sky. But as the helicopter descended, the door to the roof access burst open behind them. It was Marco. Alessandro lowered his gun, relieved. Marco, thank God. Get on the bird. Marco didn't move. He raised his gun, and he pointed it straight at Audrey's heart. I'm sorry, boss, Marco said, tears streaming down his face. Lorenzo has my wife. He said if I let the girl leave, my wife dies. The wind whipped around them. The helicopter hovered, the ladder dropping. Marco, don't do it, Alessandro pleaded, stepping in front of Audrey. Move, Alessandro! Marco screamed, his hand shaking. I have to! You'll have to shoot through me! A shot rang out, but Marco didn't fire. Marco's chest exploded in a spray of red. He fell forward, revealing a figure standing in the doorway behind him. It was Mr. Henderson, the manager from the restaurant. He was holding a smoking revolver with trembling hands. Alessandro and Audrey stared in shock. I followed the news, Henderson stammered, looking at the gun as if it were an alien object. I saw the photos. I knew you were in trouble. I owed you for not firing me. Alessandro didn't question the absurdity of it. He grabbed Audrey and hauled her up the ladder into the hovering helicopter. He reached down and pulled a terrified Henderson up, just as more security guards burst onto the roof. The helicopter banked sharply, bullets pinging off the fuselage, and disappeared into the night. As the city lights faded below them, Alessandro looked at Audrey. They were covered in blood, dirt, and glass. They had nothing but the clothes on their backs. It's over, Audrey whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. No, Alessandro said, looking out at the city that was now his battlefield. It's just beginning. 6 months later, the snow fell softly outside the windows of the Gilded Lily, but inside, the restaurant was warmer than it had ever been. The war for the city had been brutal but short. With Uncle Sal's resources and the element of surprise, Alessandro had dismantled his father's empire piece by piece. Don Lorenzo was currently serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison, stripped of his assets and his title. The restaurant was buzzing, but the atmosphere was different. The staff moved with confidence, not fear. At the best table in the house, Alessandro sat holding a glass of wine, the 1998 vintage. He didn't smash it. He savored it. He looked different now. The rage that used to vibrate off him was gone, replaced by a quiet, commanding authority. He was the Don now, but he ruled with a code, not a whip. "Your soup, sir," a voice said. Alessandro looked up. Audrey stood there, smiling. She wasn't wearing an apron anymore. She was wearing a tailored blazer and diamond earrings. She wasn't serving the table. She was joining it. "Thank you, Mrs. Moretti," Alessandro said, pulling out the chair for her. As Audrey sat, a man in a sharp tuxedo walked by, inspecting the wine list with expert precision. It was Mr. Henderson. He wasn't the trembling manager anymore. He was the major domo of the Moretti estate, the man who managed the logistics of the entire family business. He gave them a curt, respectful nod. Alessandro took Audrey's hand. The scar on his knuckles had faded, but the memory hadn't. "You know," Alessandro said, looking around the room that he had once wrecked, "they still call me the butcher's son." Audrey squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with that same kindness that had stopped a monster in his tracks. "Let them talk. We know the truth. You didn't wreck the world, Alessandro. You just had to break it to build something better." He kissed her knuckles. "No, you fixed it. With a glass of water and a bandage." And that is the incredible story of Alessandro and Audrey. It proves that sometimes the strongest weapon against a world of violence isn't a gun or a fist. It's a simple act of empathy. Audrey saw a man in pain when everyone else saw a monster, and that single moment of bravery changed the fate of an entire city. From the shattered glass of a luxury restaurant to the rooftop escape under gunfire, their journey shows us that even the darkest hearts can be healed if someone is brave enough to offer a hand instead of turning away. Alessandro learned that true power doesn't come from fear, but from having something worth protecting. If you enjoyed this dramatic mafia romance and want to see more stories about unexpected love, revenge, and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were in Audrey's shoes? Would you have helped Alessandro or run the other way? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.